You're listening to Fulfilling Career, Happy Life, the podcast for accomplished professionals who want to identify what's next in their career, then make it happen without compromising what matters most. I'm your host, Randy Roberts, an executive and career life coach, and I'm glad you're here. If you want to feel more energized about your work again, this show is for you. So let's get into it. Hi there. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode. I'm really excited because my guest is Renee Roper. Renee has a really great background. She was a woman in STEM before we called it that, before it was cool. She was cool before it was cool. She's got a great background, a BS in chemical engineering from Cornell, a master's in chemical engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology, an MBA from NYU, which I love because the combination of the science background and the business training just always turns me on. The real reason that I wanted Renee to join us is based on a conversation that she and I had recently. She's in a phase where she recently retired after a very successful career and was immediately pulled back into her company because they couldn't do without her. So as a consultant in a similar kind of role, same company, which gives you an opportunity to really reflect on what are the differences and after you retire and things like that. So that's what our conversation today will be about. So Renee, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Randy. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Before we dive into the part that I teased about a little bit, you and I have talked a lot over the years that we've known each other about our careers. And like many of us, with busy, engaging careers, there's a part of our self-identity that's wrapped up in what we do. And I just wanted to ask you, what was the experience like to decide to retire and the transition to retirement?
Okay. Well, I think in terms of my, my decision to retire, that came very quickly for me. I guess you get for me, it was a point in my career where I had done so many different types of roles and had so many different experiences. And I was just ready to pivot to do something very, very different. And it was really my desire to be more active in my volunteering and, my social justice activities and education and mentoring. And I found that, those things that really started to drive me, that's what brightened up my day. When I spent a day volunteering with Junior Achievement, I came home one day and I said, if I could do this the rest of my life, I would really be happy. And so what I was finding is that my outside interests were outweighing my corporate interests. And as I really, realized that, and and then it's been 30 some odd years, that's how I knew that it was time to make the shift to retirement. So I wasn't nervous about retirement. I didn't have apprehensions. I didn't have a lot of those feelings because throughout my career, I've always loved learning, new jobs, new environments, new people. I thrive off of that. And so when I decided to retire and my feelings towards retirement, for me, it was just another extension of me growing and learning, but just taking it in a different direction.
Yeah. It's so interesting what you said, Renee, because I've recently started having more and more conversations with clients about thinking ahead to retirement and that phase of their career, if you will, and what that transition will be like. And so many of them wondering what they will do to stay engaged, to stay intellectually stimulated and all that. And you almost had the opposite experience, which is so beautiful, of you had these other things you were already engaged in that were drawing you there rather than looking to fill that bucket. That's terrific.
Yeah.
So focusing on your transition from employee and leader within your company to now consultant doing similar work in the same environment. Tell me what that's like. What is different about your world now?
It is surprisingly different but it's different in nuances because the work that I'm doing and the technical support and projects that I lead are very similar to what I would have done, working at my company. So the differences are now really about my attitude towards it, and the structure of it. Just because now I'm hourly and I do have to track my time and look at all those details. But what I find is that I'm much more engaged in the work. I have a stronger commitment to the work, which probably sounds counterintuitive because when you're working, you have internal customers, external customers. Things are very busy. You feel like you're getting a lot done. But now I've got like a real personal, deep commitment to the colleagues that I'm supporting and the projects that I'm running because I can see the tie-in specifically between my efforts and how it makes their job easier or how it enhances and speeds their learning. And so it's actually more rewarding in that sense because you've got that immediate tie-in of my reactions and the results. I mean, we all have those corporate goals, and you're supposed to figure out how does my job, tie to that unit margin amount. But, you can't really see that, right? But as a consultant, you have very specific projects, you work with specific people, you see where your value is, and it's a very, you feel like you're having large of an impact. So it's not around the job content, it's around all those other things.
This is so surprising. I didn't expect this answer, and it's really enlightening for me because what I'm hearing you say is the connections to the people and the contributions to the success of others is maybe a more personal connection than the contribution to the P&L.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting because it occurs to me that, so many of my clients and my listeners are business leaders. And it occurs to me that that could be really important in leading your people if you can really help those personal connections. We're always laddering up to the business, and that's important, but not to forget that piece. Really, really important. Thank you. You mentioned something also interesting that now that you're a contractor and you're tracking your hours, which is so different than an employee executive when we just, we are breathing. Of course we could be working kind of thing. So what's different for you now that you're tracking your hours?
Yeah, now that I track my hours, things are radically different because I've never in my career actually sat down and thought and reflected. It's not really thinking, but reflecting on how long things take. We do a lot of spinning plates. We're answering emails. Following up on 10 different things at once. The days fly by. The days are really long. The days are stressful. But with in consulting, where you have to track your hours, you have to be responsible. You have to know what you're doing and how you're spending your time. That's been that kind of reflection is very, very different. So I track everything that I do. So I know how long it takes me if I get an email with question XYZ. I know that's going to take me 30 minutes to respond. Or if the question's like this, that's a deeper dive. That's going to be 2 hours of my effort. And I know how much longer projects are going to take. And that was a real reflection for me, an eye-opening, was that things really take a long time to get done. And I never realized that before. You just kind of work and you have your to-do list and you check things off and you keep going. But now I'm very cognizant of the amount of effort that it takes. And I don't take as many shortcuts in getting things done. I'm still super efficient, but now that I realize that my role is so much of still, transferring information and helping people learn, I make sure that I am, extremely thorough. I make sure that is all well communicated. And so although I'm efficient, I don't take all of my, I don't take a lot of shortcuts that would preclude somebody else from following and learning what I have done. So it's a different kind of mindset from that standpoint.
Yeah, it is. This is another answer that surprises me. I'm loving this conversation. Because I guess what I expected you to say was finding efficiencies and setting boundaries and things like that. But what you're finding is sometimes you're doing the work in a more deep way because it's helping others. Now, you've always been efficient. You feel that you still are efficient. How are you, like, is the work taking you longer? How are you managing the now accounting for hours and trying to deliver, not take shortcuts and things like that? How do those things live together?
Um, Things do not take longer because they're very, very focused. Unlike your regular job where, emails keep flying in and there's a lot of distractions. As you consult, you can be extremely focused. You don't have those miscellaneous conversations. You're not hanging out in the coffee room. You're not, stopping to chat. So when I'm working, I am working 100%. So that's where you get the efficiency and the time saving all comes back because you're deeply focused. And I can set my own timing and my own priorities and the projects that, what am I going to do this day to accomplish whatever? And I can focus on that without distraction and I can get it done. So I have the luxury of that single focus that I can go deep, I can be thorough, and I can probably still get it done faster than if I was ever at work with all the other things that go on at work. So that kind of like clears that out.
Yeah. So is it that you're making different choices based on that high degree of focus? Or is it that as a contractor, I'll call it, are you less at the mercy of others? You don't have people pulling you in so many different directions.
Yeah, it's both of those things actually, but it's more around I make the choices and I decide what I'm going to work on, and I decide that I'm not going to go on to project X until project Y is completely finished, and I have the luxury of doing that. Granted, I get emails and I get IMs and can you help me with this and can you take a call? And yeah, that's when, days feel like the old hectic days at work. So I still have that pull. And it is enjoyable to break up that kind of, the deep focus. But I think it's around the way I set the priorities
Yeah,
and I make sure that I get things done completely and well, and then I can move on to something else.
that's great. It's, this reminds me of some of the conversations I've had recently with clients because, and I remember it from when I was in corporate, you have emails coming in and depending on how you have the settings, you might be getting a ping or it might show up on your computer while you're on Zoom. And then you've got IMs and then you might have Slack stuff built and you're getting texts. And it's, kind of one of the ground rules. I mean, there's exceptions, of course, but my clients, their commitment to themselves during our coaching sessions is the phone gets turned over or put away. They turn off the notifications, whatever that looks like, so they can focus on themselves. And sometimes I wonder, is the hour that we spend together so powerful because of the transformations that they're making or because they shut everything off and just really focus on themselves? Oh my goodness, the things that we do to ourselves. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is so important what you're saying about being sort of self-driven and being able to shut out some of the noise that I'll call it. Do you think if you had that awareness when you were an employee and in that swirl, do you think it could have made a difference to your work life and your efficiency and all of that?
I think it's huge, absolutely huge if I had known this years and years ago. Yes, it is would have made such a difference because I think it really is what you said about that word boundaries. I mean, that's one of the key things I've learned in consulting or, reflected on in consulting is setting boundaries. And boundaries not only around, your mental health, your physical health, but also boundaries around what you want out of a job. Like I enjoy that technical depth and that technical learning. That should be something that gets works into my plan. So I should have boundaries around that. I should have a boundary. I should have rewards. I mean, it's so critical to be able to have something accomplished and then reward yourself for it. We get it done and we just go, oh, now it's on to the next thing. I mean, we don't take the time to do those things. So I would have a lot more, understand myself better, what motivates me, what I enjoy, what's necessary to reduce stress. And I would work those things and have some boundaries around them. Because else, we can be, like you said, we can work not 24/7, but maybe 22. We
Oh yeah.
we can work a lot. And so
Yeah.
I think that would have made a huge difference to my efficiency. And actually, there's so many great planners. Those, $24, you can get a great planner that
I just
can
bought a
help you.
$50 one.
Well, I don't know about that. I hope it's worth that $50.
No,
But
actually, my old composition book would have worked just as well, but that's my problem.
but they have the tasks. They have that little review box at the bottom of the page that said what went well, what didn't go well. Here's my goals. What'll be my reward if I accomplish my goal? Here's my work things. Here's my personal things. And, use kind of that to set boundaries around your life, or so that, you don't have salespeople calling you at 7 o'clock at night asking for stuff. Life is not supposed to be that way.
Yeah. And it occurs to me that from a leadership perspective, it's not that hard to focus on those rewards and things like that. Sometimes it's as simple as providing fast feedback. When you catch people doing something right, acknowledge it to them and maybe publicly and write it in their review, whatever that looks like. But some of the things you said are so important, Renee, around like knowing what's important to you, knowing what lights you up. For you, it's the depth of the technological aspects of what you do. And I mean, obviously that's what I'm about. My podcast is Fulfilling Career Happy Life. So yeah, it's like if younger Renee, younger Randy could have known those things. And that's what this is about, trying to help other people to know those things. Really important.
Yes.
Okay. So what was the big reward you gave yourself when you retired? I mean, that's like a capstone, What was it?
Believe it or not, what I did when I retired is the first week that I retired, the week after I retired, I booked all kinds of volunteer activities. And I just filled that entire week. I filled three out of the 5 days volunteering. And that's how I kind of like celebrated my transition, was, doing stuff that I wanted to do. So I was down working in a charter school in Trenton. And I did another little women's leadership forum. So yeah, I just was like, boom, just jumped out into it.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
That's I mean, a celebration for yourself and one that gives back. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's what I like. So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that'll look different for everybody, Some people have the big trips or, whatever you want to do to capstone. So, I think when I finish consulting, that'll be another time to do a different type of reward.
So what's the plan? Do you have one in mind?
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to be working until the end of March. And I think what I want to do is I want to do New York City and a Broadway play and, stay overnight and just kind of like do a kind of celebration that way.
Beautiful. I love it.
Because that'll be like a true change.
Yeah. Yeah. Something different, something fun. It doesn't have to be something too extravagant, but working towards, I think that's important. I talk to clients a lot when they accomplish something about how are you going to celebrate. And it's amazing how many people don't have an answer, which I relate to. I'm not great at that either. So it's a constant process, but something as leaders to keep in mind is helping people. It occurs to me that the simple truths that you just shared about knowing what you love and what lights you up, and being more focused, and the power of knowing how your contributions help others. Those things are things leaders just asking questions about, being curious about how those things motivate others and impact others, and tapping into that. Doesn't require a big corporate program, any money. It's just a little awareness and some time.
Right. And, we're with such a diverse population, that's going to look different for everybody, and leaders really do have to take that individualized approach. And it's not necessarily that you do it at, the goals review, but, it's any time that you stop in the office or have a little catch up or, anything like that. It doesn't have to be formal, but you can tease those types of answers or, thoughts and discussions out of people, in very easy ways. And then just take some notes on, okay, this is what motivates so and so. It's not that difficult to do.
Yeah.
And then keep that in mind as when, whether you're assigning projects, whether you're creating teams, you're just putting all those bits and pieces together for your organizations.
Yeah, I think that is such great advice, because if it's held for the formal review process or some formal, awards or acknowledgments, those things are great. But really what that says is, we're a company that values the formal process. Whereas if you sprinkle it in day to day and just put some attention to it, that's how you build your culture. It's what you do and what people see. So, so important. I really appreciate it. This conversation's been so stimulating. We've packed so much into a short period of time, but I think the thing that really, really sticks me is how valuable your connection to helping others. Maybe to some extent, it's the phase of your life. You almost have the luxury to now think of those things, but it's applying to your work. It's motivating you and making you feel that, fulfilled in the hours that you're putting in. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you, Renee. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome. This has been a wonderful time to talk about this, and for me also to think about these things and reflect in ways that I wouldn't have otherwise. So I really appreciate the time, Randi. Thank you.
Here's a little bonus tip that Renee called me with after our conversation, and she had a chance to reflect on it. Something else she wishes she had known is that as people transition to retirement, we really need to give ourselves permission to explore the other aspects and interests in their lives. Some of these things have been so neglected in the scope of a busy career and raising a family and all the things, that transition can be so much smoother and so much more exciting if we have those other things that are pulling us, rather than having to figure out what those are after we leave and maybe feel a little lost. So Renee's feeling is that the sometimes hesitancy to explore what could be may block people in having the most fulfilling transition to retirement. Thanks so much for listening to Fulfilling Career Happy Life. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, follow, rate, and review. Do all the things to show your support for this podcast. It helps other professionals who want to feel more energized about their work again find us. And if you want to take this thinking further, please follow me on LinkedIn, where I share content on a regular basis. You can also get on my email list by downloading the Career Satisfaction Assessment or through my website. All these links are in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in. I truly appreciate that you make the time for yourself to listen to the show. See you next week.